My name is Sheila. Before I can even remember, my father passed away due to illness. From then on, it was just my mother and me. Sheila, do you miss your dad? Sometimes, but it's okay because I have you, Mom. Even without my father, I had my kind and hardworking mother. She was always smiling in front of me, and just having her around was enough for me. But there were days we couldn't be together. My mother is a magazine journalist. After my father passed away, she apparently returned to the weekly magazine editorial department she worked for before getting married. So she often had to leave home for work. If I said I wasn't lonely, I'd be lying. But I love my hardworking mother, and I willingly stayed at my grandparents' place when she was away. By the time I was in high school, I had fully adjusted. Are you going to be late from work today, or can you make it home? I think I'll make it home. Then I'll prepare dinner. Sheila, are you sure you can handle it? I'm already in high school, Mom. I can at least cook. Well, I suppose so. I'm looking forward to it then. My mom always looked apologetic, but I didn't mind at all. I'm forever grateful to her for raising me single-handedly. I have to get accepted into a university to repay Mom's hard work, right? With that determination, I faced my college entrance exams. The result? I passed splendidly. I went straight into college, graduated smoothly, and got a job at a local bank. But working at the bank was harder than I thought, and every day was a struggle. One day, when I returned to the locker room, completely drained, my colleague Tori called out, "You look beat, Sheila." You too, Tori. Hey, Sheila, I have a favor to ask. What is it? We're going for a group date after this. Can you join us? We're short on people. Tori's college buddy apparently worked at a certain government office. But there were very few women at the workplace, and they were having trouble finding romantic partners. So he contacted Tori through their old college connections. They're all seriously looking for marriage partners, so I don't want to take along anyone weird. Ugh, you owe me one, Tori. Alright then. Thanks, Sheila. So I went on this group date led by Tori. Of course, I was just there to show my face as a favor for Tori. The people who came to the mixer were all just regular folks. They weren't the uptight people I had imagined. While I was confused by the gap between reality and my imagination, a man spoke to me. Are you Sheila, a banker like Tori? Yes. Are you perhaps nervous? Yes, I'm not good at things like this. Actually, I'm the same. I was only brought here to make up the numbers. Somehow, it was oddly calming, and it seems like he was brought here just to make up the numbers, like me. He's kind of easy to talk to. That was my first impression of Dan. Afterwards, I exchanged contacts with Dan as we were leaving. He invited me out for dinner a few times, and we started dating. My parents have been nagging me to get married, so I want to propose soon. Is that okay? Of course. I stood up without thinking. In that moment, everyone's gaze was on me, and the embarrassment I felt is now a fond memory. Anyway, Dan's proposal came a few months later. Please marry me. Yes, please take care of me. I'm relieved. I told you it's okay, didn't I? I'll book a restaurant at the hotel, so bring your mom. Sheila, I'll bring my parents. That's a great idea. After that, I reported to my mother that I was getting married. My mother was overjoyed and asked about my fiancé. What kind of person is he? He's a bureaucrat working for the government. Well done, Sheila. You're marrying a rich man. A rich man! That's an exaggeration, Mom. Well, I'm relieved, no matter what. So when will he come for the wedding greeting? It was 2 weeks after this conversation. When I arrived at the designated hotel restaurant where Dan and his parents were waiting. Nice to meet you. I'm Sheila. This is my mother, Tanya. You're Sheila. You're quite a lovely girl. Dan's father complimented me. I blushed and said, Not at all, thank you. As we continued to talk, the conversation turned to parenting, and Dan's mother asked, So you were raised by your mother alone? She really grew up to be a good girl. I didn't do anything special. As we were having such a conversation, Dan's father said, A child from a single-parent home. That worries me a bit. Oh, what about a single-parent home concerns you? My mother asked Dan's father. Dan's father chuckled. Well, you're self-employed as a freelance writer, right? So the child of a poor person is becoming my daughter-in-law. That would naturally be concerning. A poor person's child. My mother frowned. I glanced at Dan and saw that he was just fumbling. Why isn't he saying anything when I'm being belittled? I thought as the thought flashed through my mind. I've helped with the application for financial assistance for such poor people. It was really a hassle. At that moment, my mother's gaze sharpened. She seemed quite angry. But she didn't voice it. Instead, she said to Dan's father, "You're quite the bureaucrat. For future reference, please tell me more." "Sure. If you listen carefully, it'll be a good reference for a poor person." Well, well. In that case, can I record your noble story? Perhaps inspired as a freelance writer, my mother took out a pen and notebook. All right. Mostly, I work on applying for benefits. Dan's father started talking cheerfully. However, the content was entirely derogatory. He referred to ordinary people as poor and constantly claimed that they were useless. He further stated that poor people are meant to be used and they were in a position to use them. I wonder what Dan thinks of this story. I looked at Dan. Then it seemed like Dan wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything. I didn't expect him to be so unreliable. He didn't stand up for me earlier either. I felt my love for Dan cooling down. Is it really okay to marry this person? I even started having such thoughts. Just then, bang! Suddenly, my mother rose from her seat. That's enough. I can't let my precious daughter marry the son of people like you. Oh, are you going to break off the engagement now? In that case, we will demand compensation for emotional distress. Dan's mother threatened. My mother, not to be outdone, glared back. Go ahead, feel free. I'll pay any amount of compensation. Can the poor pay? I can pay anything. But in return, I'm going to sue you too. A poor person standing up to a bureaucrat? That's unbelievable. Don't regret it. I won't regret anything. Look forward to tomorrow's morning talk shows. With that, my mother turned to me. She took my hand and said, Sheila, I'm sorry, I've messed up the marriage. No, it's okay. I didn't think he was like this either. I glared at Dan and he quickly looked away. He couldn't say anything back to his parents even when I or my mother was being insulted. I didn't think Dan was that kind of person. Therefore, not a shred of love remained. The broken engagement even felt refreshing. Sheila, let's go home. Later, as we left the restaurant, my mother told me, I have preparations for tomorrow, so I need to go. Don't let this get to you, Sheila. As soon as I parted with my mother, tears welled up in my eyes, not from sadness. If anything, I felt more betrayed by Dan. And then the next day, since it was a holiday, I was watching videos at home. But then I remembered what my mother had said and turned on the TV. A familiar news anchor appeared on the screen saying, We have obtained information from a certain magazine's editorial department about fraudulent benefit claims. Hearing those words, I remembered something. Fraudulent claims? Could it be about yesterday? Actually, when Dan's father was talking about benefits, he also talked about fraudulent claims. A friend asked for a favor, and a colleague helped with the application for benefits. But the friend's application was a lie, and he wasn't eligible for benefits. Scared of getting caught, the colleague ordered his subordinate to erase the data from the application. In other words, it was a cover-up. But at the end, Dan's father said this, Well, being a bureaucrat gives you that kind of power. You should be grateful that you're marrying into a family of bureaucrats. Despite his arrogant words, did he not realize that his colleague was doing something wrong? I was utterly disgusted. But Dan didn't criticize it, and neither did Dan's mother. No matter how wrong their actions, they seemed to think it was okay as long as they had the power to do so. Does this mean the magazine's editorial department is Mom's place? Then did Mom expose Dan's dad's colleague? Just as I was thinking this, my phone suddenly rang. Hello?
Dude, it's Dan. What the hell's going on?
What do you mean?
The TV. The talk show. Dad was casually talking about it.
Well, I don't know.
Dad's furious. What are you going to do about it?
I could hear Dan's panicked voice, but there was nothing I could do. Looking at the TV again, the news anchor was saying, And that was the news about fraudulent benefit claims. We also have audio data of a confession from a serving bureaucrat. Audio data from a serving bureaucrat? Come to think of it, my mom had asked Dan's father if she could record the conversation at the greeting event yesterday. Before I could make an excuse, Dan said,
If Dad finds out there's a recording, he's going to do everything he can to get it back. You better give it back.
With that, the call from Dan abruptly ended. A wave of anxiety washed over me. Perhaps he might resort to force. The thought filled me with dread. That's it. Mom! I immediately dialed my mother. Then The sound of a ringing phone came from the front of the house. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there. Mom! Oh, hold on a sec. My phone's ringing. That's me. Oh, Sheila, it's you! What's up? Is something wrong? Well, I told her about the call from Dan, but my mother didn't seem to panic, saying, "We'll be okay, don't worry." Really? Yes. In my line of work, there are a lot of people who say the same sort of things. But then, as if she remembered something, my mother said, "Oh yes, I got a bonus for finding a story that was featured on a talk show today. Let's go out for a meal." Are you sure? We should spend this kind of money freely. Besides, there are things I'd like to forget too. My mom said this jokingly. After all, it was Dan's father's boastful conversation about his colleague's abuse of power that was the root cause of it all. Of course, what Dan's father's colleague did was wrong. In fact, his colleague was arrested due to the incident and the TV coverage. But I also think that Dan's father, who talked about the wrongdoing in a bragging manner, was at fault. Even if I'm not directly involved, I believed that ignoring it would make me complicit. When I told the story to Tori, she said, "That must have been tough. Well, it seems like this incident has led to Dan's resignation, but can't be helped. Do you want me to introduce you to someone else?" That's okay. Why? Well, actually, I've been seeing the lawyer who attended the discussion on the cancellation of my engagement with Dan and managed to get Dan's family to agree to break it off without any compensation. He's a very competent man. During the discussions, he even invited me out to dinner with him on a personal basis. Of course, I agreed without hesitation. Once things progress a little more, I want to tell Tori everything.